Welcome, everyone. We'll be starting in just a minute, just to give you a chance to transition and then settle in and get ready for our presentation today. Okay, well, let's go ahead and get started. Good afternoon and welcome, everyone. I'm Julie Chabdi, Associate Director, Health and Wellbeing Program with the WorkWell Center, and your host for today. So in support of May Mental Health Awareness Month, we're very, very excited to have for you the Courage to Go Forward 5-week webinar series sponsored by USC Healthy Campus Mental Health Subcommittee. The goal of the series is to raise awareness about mental health, reduce stigma, and provide support and community. Over the next 50 minutes, our speakers will be sharing their expertise around this very important topic, sharing support resources, and engaging you in conversation through the chat or live at the very end. Throughout today's session, you're welcome to use the chat to ask questions, make comments, and participate, and we'll have a few minutes at the end for live Q&A. Please make sure you mute so there's no background noise, and we'll go ahead and get started. So last week you heard about what mental health is, mental health at work, ingredients for creating a healthy work environment, the importance of care and community, along with support resources available to you at USC. You can view the recording of the presentation on our website. Today, we'll be discussing physical activity and mental health and well-being, sharing some of the latest research and participating in a stretch break, and also resources to help you move more. So now I'd like to introduce our two speakers for today. I've had the pleasure of working closely with both of them through our various projects with WorkWell and Healthy Campus. And I can tell you they're so passionate about what they do, and I've truly enjoyed our collaborations together. So please join me in welcoming Tom Badzey, Employee Assistance Professional with the WorkWell Center, and Sarah Ivanhoe, Director of USC Yoga. And before I turn it over to them, when they introduce themselves, I would love for them to share their favorite fitness activity with you in the spirit of the theme. And I'll go ahead and go first. My favorite activity is spin classes. So I spin about 5 days a week. So with that, I'll turn it over to, oh, actually not quite yet. As we always do, we invite you to move anytime during today's session. Feel free to move, stand, stretch in any manner that feels best for you. And this is just a short reminder because later on today, you'll get a special treat from Sarah, the real stretch break. So with that, I'll turn it over to Tom Badzey.
Okay, thank you, Julie. It's great to see you all. Thank you for allowing me to come and give you a little bit of insight about the connection between physical activity and mental health. And my favorite physical activity right now, I would have to say, is probably golf, although it's also extremely challenging and I'm not very good. But in terms of what are my go-to physical activities right now, I'm kind of hooked on that. So what I'm going to be reviewing, first of all, is I'm going to do an overview of what some of the more current research says about the connection between physical activity and mental health. I will then share what some of the research also shows about reasons why there seem to be mental health benefits that come from engaging in physical activity. Julie will briefly go over some ways in which to make more physical activity and exercise happen in your life. And then we will do a short exercise that helps you to get a taste of some of those benefits of physical activity and exercise and mental health, even if you don't have a lot of time. Yeah, next slide, please. All right. So earlier this year, there were two recent studies, both of which were published in the British Medical Journal, that looked into what a lot of people, I think, know just from their own personal experiences or hearing from other people. And that is that when you engage in physical activity or exercise, that there are some noticeable benefits for mental health. So both of these studies were similar in the fact that they were both meta-analyses. And so this first study that was published looked at an aggregate of 41 studies that involved more than 2,200 participants. And these researchers were looking specifically at participants who had either symptoms or confirmed diagnoses of depression. And so when they looked at these 41 studies and analyzed the data, what they found confirmed that common knowledge that I think a lot of people have around physical activity and mental health. Specifically that exercise and physical activity has a noticeable effect on depressive symptoms. So some of the symptoms that we tend to associate with depression, low motivation, low energy, sleep and eating disturbances, feeling of hopelessness or worthlessness. These researchers found that in the data that they gathered from those studies, that there is a demonstrable effect that comes from engaging in physical activity on those symptoms. And they especially found that the most noticeable effects happen with people who have major depressive disorder, and when those participants or people who are engaging in physical activity have some level of supervision. So whether that's a trainer, a coach, someone who's leading them in the physical activity, those participants seemed to have the best benefit for their mental health. Next slide, please. The second study, which also was published in the British Medical Journal, analyzed more than 97 studies that involved more than 128,000 participants. And these researchers looked not only at depression, but they also looked at anxiety and stress levels, and they wanted to see what these studies showed in terms of the effect that physical activity can have on those types of mental health challenges. And what they found was similar to the first study. The data confirms that physical activity does have a noticeable benefit on those aspects of mental health. And what stands out and potentially is a little bit controversial is the fact that these researchers concluded or suggested that physical activity could actually be more effective than medication and or psychotherapy. So as a licensed therapist myself, I'm not too worried that physical activity is going to replace my job. But it is interesting to see that they found a level of effectiveness that was at least on par and in some cases superior to medication or psychotherapy. So of course that comes with a disclaimer. If individuals are using medication to help their mental health, this decision should clearly be entered into the realm of conversation that a person has with their health professional. But it is intriguing nonetheless, and I think future studies will probably explore this even further. The strongest effects in terms of what these researchers found was that physical activity seems to have the strongest effect in depression, in participants who are also challenged with HIV or kidney disease, and the noticeable effects also occurred in pregnant women and women postpartum as well. They further analyzed the data to look at types of exercise and the impact on mental health. And what they found generally is that higher intensity workouts, such as lifting weights, anything that involves that level of rigor, seems to have a greater improvement for individuals with depression. While lower intensity exercises like yoga, although yoga was probably helped too, yoga, mind-body stretching, things like that seem to have greater improvements for anxiety. And if you think about the nature of those two types of physical activity, it does make a lot of sense because people with depression, again, tend to have issues regarding energy levels and overall engagement. higher intensity workouts seem to elevate those aspects. While the lower intensity workouts, things like yoga and mind-body stretching, they tend to create a calming or relaxing effect, which again seems to be really appropriate in people who are suffering from anxiety or stress. Go ahead and next slide, please. One thing I forgot to mention as well is that a curious effect that the researchers found was that there did seem to be some level of time-limited benefits from physical activity and mental health. Specifically, if individuals were engaged in some sort of longer-term exercise or activity program, that some of the effects started to flatten out or maybe even fade after a amount of time, which the researchers believe any exercise program that can last more than a few months, sometimes individuals have a harder time complying with that program, as well as their expectations in terms of the mental health benefits can fade a little bit over time as well. So that led the research team to recommend that that's probably a good thing to monitor and keep in mind. And it suggests that switching up your exercise programs every once in a while can help to alleviate that flattening or reduction of the benefits. So again, those two research studies seem to confirm what a lot of people know, which is physical activity is good for your mental health. And we can understand both on an individual level and a social level why we're seeing those benefits happen. So when you think individually in terms of what's happening when you are engaging in physical activity, we see the connection to a lot of specific biological factors. Primarily, physical activity is associated with an increase of production, circulation, and absorption of key neurotransmitters in the brain that are connected to our mental health. Two of the neurotransmitters that stand out the most are serotonin, which is often referred to as that feel-good hormone that helps us to feel satisfied and in a generally good mood. Think probably the feeling you get after a Thanksgiving dinner, right? Norepinephrine is that neurotransmitter that is involved in our energy, in our focus, in our ability to make decisions and be active. So that's our revving up hormone. And so physical activity, it tends to be connected or associated with increases in norepinephrine as well. Other biological effects that come from on an individual level in terms of mental health, physical activity helps to increase the effectiveness and functioning of the adrenal glands, which, as you may know, are involved in our stress response. So our ability to adapt to stress is often facilitated by the adrenal glands. And so by promoting better functioning of the adrenals, we're able to better get through some of the difficult and stressful situations in our lives and thus have a better mental health outcome. Same goes for inflammation. If you're in less discomfort and less pain, you're generally going to be in a better mood, and it will help to alleviate some of those symptoms that we associate with depression and anxiety. There is some evidence that suggests that physical activity also enhances neuroplasticity in the brain. And neuroplasticity essentially is the ability of our brain to create new connections between brain cells, between neurons. And when we have ongoing neuroplasticity, we are able to become creative, we're enjoying things more, we're adapting to change, we're able to make decisions more fluidly and more accurately. Neuroplasticity is associated with learning and generally the ability to cope with circumstances that come up with life. So clearly on an individual level, there are some key benefits in terms of engaging in physical activity. And then there are some other ones too, just that come from the fact that you accomplish a physically active routine. And over the long term, if you're achieving those goals, whether they're fitness goals, whether they're weight loss goals, those things can propel and enhance feelings of self-esteem, self-worth, self-image, and those go hand in hand with our overall mental health outlook. Next slide, please. On a social level, there are clearly some benefits in terms of engaging in physical activity with other people. Two studies that jumped out to me. The first one that was conducted at Washington State University about 10 or 11 years ago that showed that the social connections that happen when you are active with other people can increase feelings of social competence, self-worth, and hope. And as you might expect, those three measurements are key to individuals who are maybe experiencing depression or anxiety. One of the most common reasons for anxiety come from social interactions. And so being physically active with people in a social dynamic seem to enhance the feelings of social competence and then therefore help to reduce levels of anxiety. And as I mentioned earlier, some of the more common symptoms of depression involve a lack of self-worth, a feeling of hopelessness. And so again, socializing with people through physical activity seem to help to counteract those symptoms of depression. The Journal of Sports Economics in 2017 also published a study which showed that the pro-social behaviors that people experience when they are engaging in physical activity can increase a feeling of trust. And as Brene Brown talked about, I had the privilege of watching the talk that Brene Brown gave a few years ago at USC entitled The Anatomy of Trust. And in this talk, Brene Brown talked about not only the components that contribute to a feeling of trust for other people, but that then trust translates into connection. And when we feel connection, then we feel that increase in all of those parameters we were talking about before, in terms of engagement in life, in terms of empathy towards other people, in terms of just our view of ourselves in the world, feelings of hope and optimism. And this seems to be confirmed by neuroscientist Dr. Daniel Siegel, who's written several books on the subject of neuroscience and what's happening in our brains at various points in our life. And he believes that that individual benefit I talked about earlier in terms of the increase in certain biochemicals in the brain, in terms of helping to enhance neuroplasticity, he not only attributes that on an individual level when we are engaging in physical activity, but because of the social aspects of engaging with physical activity with other people, he believes it's actually the social interactions that we have with others have more to do with increases in neuroplasticity, possibly than any other factor. So I think this points out the idea that getting more active, being more physically engaged, to look at those possibilities, not only for yourself or doing those things on your own, but also balancing that out with possibilities and options that involve other people. Next slide, please. So Julie's going to go over some of the guidelines that can help you to look into the prospect of trying to make physical activity happen more frequently in your life. So Julie, go ahead and take over from here, and I'll come back in a few moments.
Sure. Thank you so much, Tom, for sharing all that great research and the significance of these findings with our mental, physical, social, emotional, environmental health, just such a huge, important topic for us. So the key is, how do we put this into action and what can we do? So according to the physical activity guidelines for Americans, adults need 150 minutes of moderate intensity physical activity and 2 days a week of muscle strengthening. So for example, 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week is what we usually say. And moderate intensity activity could be brisk walking, dancing, taking a fitness class, yoga, depending on the intensity of the yoga class. And then strength training would involve working all major muscle groups. So making sure you hit your legs, your hips, your back, arms, chest, shoulders. Or you can also do vigorous intensity aerobic activity, such as jogging or running, for 75 minutes every week. And that comes out to about 1 hour and 15 minutes. Not all at once, although some of us do that all in one day, but just breaking that up to make it more manageable. And then 2 days a week of muscle strengthening, or a combination of both moderate and vigorous intensity activity. So are you getting the recommended amount of physical activity for optimal health? We want to find out from you, so we have a poll for you to answer. Suzanne, if we can launch the poll. Tell us Are you getting the recommended amount of physical activity I just shared? Yes, I am, but I want to do more, which is always great. Yes, I am. I'm happy with my activity level. Everything is good. No changes needed. No, I'm not, and I'm trying to do more. No, I'm not, and I just can't seem to do anymore. So let's see, we still have answers coming in. All right, let me end the poll and share the results. So as you can see here, not surprising, almost half of this group is not getting the recommended amount of activity that I just mentioned and trying to do more. So we're hoping that after today, participating in the various Move More programs that we have coming that we'll be announcing very soon, and just really finding ways to connect socially with other colleagues, family members, finding what you enjoy, that you'll be able to increase that physical activity. So let me just move on here. So we'd like to hear what you like to do. What are your favorite workouts? I see some things in the chat already, so please share with us. What are some of your favorite fitness activities you like to do? And this could give ideas for others. It doesn't always have to be in a gym. It doesn't always mean running. What are some ways that gets you moving? Walking, dancing, tennis. These are coming in fast. Swimming, walking my dog, yoga, HIIT classes, Muay Thai, ooh, cycling, walking around the grocery store twice. I love it, love these. Salsa dancing, walking around campus, wonderful. Zoom yoga during lunch break, what a great way to fit that in. Hiking, yep. Feel free to keep these coming. And now we'd like to hear what gets in the way. What are some barriers and obstacles to fitting in activity? We heard that many of you aren't getting enough, would like to do more. So what is it that gets in the way of doing additional physical activity? So we have things like time, weather, pain, kids, feeling tired, commuting, traffic, caring for family, not making it a priority, lack of sleep. Yeah, a lot of really understandable obstacles that we're challenged with every day. And my last question to you is, what are some solutions? And it could be anyone answering this. Let's help each other out here. What can we do? For those of you who are consistent, what have you done to make it work? What are some things you've put in place to be consistent? And what is some advice you have for others here? Start small. Group fitness holds you accountable, yet having that supervision, as Tom mentioned earlier. Getting exercise in first thing in the morning, absolutely. That's what I do. Can't do anything else until you exercise. Putting it in your calendar. Loving yourself more. Self-motivation, planning. Yep, keep these comments coming. Love it. Wonderful. I'm going to turn it back over to Tom to help us keep going with putting this into action. Tom?
All right, thanks, Julie. Yeah, so as we saw from the chat, one of the more common answers that people identify as barriers to getting more physical activity involves time and scheduling. I will raise my hand and absolutely put myself in that group as well, that sometimes finding the time, trying to figure out when am I going to work in some physical activity into my busy schedule, how do I make that happen? So clearly, as Julie showed, what you're aiming for is to try to hit those milestones in terms of amounts of physical activity per week, in terms of having a variety of different options and routines that are available to you. And if you find it difficult to create the time in your schedule to make those things happen, then that's where a trainer, a coach, an OT, can potentially work with you to help you to figure out how to create changes in your schedule and carve out that time that's really important for physical activity. But I also want to introduce you to an activity that only takes a couple of minutes. And so on those days, at those times when you don't feel like you have enough time to do 30 or 45 or 60 minutes of a workout, giving yourself at least the taste of some of the mental health benefits that can come from physical activity might be an option for you as well. And so that can come in the form of what we call mindful movement. So I'll introduce to you what that activity entails, and then we're actually going to have a little chance to try it out right now. Um, and just as a little tease, as a plug for next week's webinar, there will be a much deeper dive and a specific focus on mindfulness. So I hope you're able to come back next week and get to absorb all that information and participate in that webinar, because it's going to be really fantastic in terms of speaking more about mindfulness. But in terms of mindful moving, it really entails selecting some sort of activity that just takes a couple of moments and involves some level of physical activity. So that might be walking around your office or walking down the block and back. It might be doing some routines or chores around the house that need to get done, sweeping the floor, doing the dishes, maybe some gardening, things like that. Something that does not take a lot of time and is readily accessible to you. And the way that you make that type of movement mindful is that all you have to really do is pay attention to what information you are getting from all 5 of your senses, or at least as many senses as you can detect during that experience. So if I were doing mindful moving while I'm doing the dishes, which, full confession, I don't really like doing the dishes, but doing mindful movement helps me to actually feel more engaged in that activity. I would be going through all of my senses as I'm washing the dishes and checking in terms of what information I'm getting. So from a sight standpoint, I'd be looking at, wow, what do the soap bubbles look like? Oh, I noticed this certain pieces of food that are on that dish. I noticed the way that the water is running from the faucet. You can do the same thing in terms of the other senses. Touch, the texture of the soap and the water on your hands. What does it sound like as those dishes are clinking? Just engaging in some sensory check-in while you're doing that movement will create some level of mental health benefit. I've tried this oftentimes myself, try to work it on a daily or weekly basis, and I noticed that it just provides maybe small, but noticeable improvements in just my overall mood and feeling of engagement in my life. So I'm going to invite you right now, next slide, please, to try this out. So really, what it's going to entail is you're going to turn off your screen for a couple minutes, choose an activity that you can do right now that will not take a lot of time, just a couple of minutes. And then while you are doing that activity, just do a brief check-in to as many senses as you can pay attention to during that activity. And then after the 2 minutes are done, we'll come back and then we'll see what kind of feedback or how that was for you. So I'll start my timer right now. So it's about 12:28. So we'll turn off our screens and then we will be back around 12:30. All right, thank you. Oh, All right, I'm gonna welcome everyone back. Hopefully we have most people back now. And as people are entering back into the space, I invite you, anyone to share out loud or in the chat, what feelings did you notice coming up for you as you were engaging in that mindful movement? I'd love to hear from you. So either you can share out loud or in the chat. What did you feel when you were engaging in that mindful movement? See, calm, relaxed, lighter, present, yes, more centered, amused. Yeah, good. More attention. Yeah, thank you. So even though I can't scientifically measure this, I would suspect that you just gave yourself a nice little extra dose of some of those wonderful neurotransmitters swimming around in your brain. So hopefully you got a taste of what some physical movement and that relationship to mental health can feel like. And so hopefully that this can be something you can integrate more often in terms of your daily activities. It can also be something that you integrate into those longer workout or physical activity sessions that you do either individually or with other people. It's another way to make those experiences perhaps more enjoyable and feel like you get more out of them. And so as I'm handing this off to Sarah, I actually would suggest perhaps we can even use some mindfulness when she's leading us in her activity. So anyway, thank you for allowing me to share, and I'm going to hand it over to Sarah now. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Oh,
Go ahead, Sarah. I'm pleased to share Sarah Ivanhoe, Director of Yoga USC. That was such a teaser from Tom, and now we're excited to have Sarah for the next 5 minutes or so.
great, Tom. That was wonderful. Thank you so much for that. So, Julie, you had asked us to first share what our favorite activity was. So, of course, my favorite activity is yoga, and I like it. It's my favorite because it has been able to adapt with me through every stage of my life. I started practicing yoga when I was 14 years old. And my yoga practice looked very different when I was 14 into my 20s and 30s. Now that I'm heading into my 50s, what my body can do is very different. And what's so, to me, continually exciting about yoga is how it really adapts to the needs of the practitioner. So with that said, we'll do a little bit of it today. And we're going to just start by having everyone bring your attention to your breathing. And many of you may have been taught or invited to take extremely deep breaths or kind of force breath into your body. I'd like to invite you to something very different today. Instead, I'd like you to be aware of your breath and to try to guide the breath into being as smooth as is possible. Imagine your breath is like stepping on the gas pedal. If you're in a car, you don't want somebody to be having a bumpy ride. Your breathing is the way you move through life. So let's just go for not necessarily more breath, but for the next 5 minutes, just a very smooth ride. Great. So as we do that, we'll just begin very simply. We're going to do this whole practice from this seated position. We'll just take your shoulders up, back, down, and around. And continue this really simple, accessible movement for a few moments with your smooth, even breath. Well, let's roll them the other direction, forward and around. Great, and release. Let's move to our head and neck. Gently take your head over to the right and begin to very easily roll it a couple circles. And as you do this movement on your own, for a moment, close your eyes and start to listen to the sound your breath is making. Try rolling the head the other direction and smooth out the breathing. Great. And then bring your head to a central position. Allow your eyes to open. You're just going to lift one arm up over your head, and in your chair, whatever way you can, just gently reach over to the side. And I'd love for you to explore for a moment. Sometimes I do this a little further forward, sometimes I reach a little further back. But don't decide in advance where it should be. Just like Tom was suggesting, sort of investigate it in the now moment where that stretch feels good to you. And then always mindful of how we exit a stretch, right? Just because a stretch is on its way to being done, we don't want to throw it away. The exit matters. Let's go to side two. Go ahead and lift the arm up and up and over to the side. You're just going to your comfort level. Again, try closing your eyes and listening to the sound you make when you're stretching. Smooth breath is soothing to the nervous system. And then come all the way up and mindfully release your arm. And then just from whatever seated position you can, go ahead and turn your body to one side. Go ahead and take yourself into a twist. If you want to use your armrest to twist a little further, you may. Again, for a moment, close your eyes. Maybe get a little taller as you inhale. Maybe twist a little deeper on the exhale. And then open your eyes, and you never want to pop out of the twist, right? Just release it nice and easy. Let's go over to the other side. Close your eyes for a moment in the twist and just notice one side may be a little more flexible than the other. You don't want to push that, just allow that to be. Allow your eyes to open and just notice how you release your stretch. Great. You're going to go ahead and lift your hands up and make little fists. So I don't know about all of you, but I'm also a doctoral student. I'm spending a lot of time, a lot of time and energy on the keyboard. So my wrists are really feeling it. So I just do these little circles. Find this really helpful. And then sometimes I'll just very gently give it a little stretch on the wrist forward. And then back like this, but just make sure not to do this too hard. Very delicate little bones in the hand, so you don't want to push that. Just so there's no kind of, you just break up the repetitive monotony on the wrists. Great, and then just a little like so, and then release. Now for this next part, you won't be able to see me, but I'm going to invite you to bring your awareness to your feet. Try pointing your toes for a moment. And then flexing your feet just right where you are. Point and flex a couple of times. And then try taking some ankle circles, your feet out and in. Just circle them whatever way comes naturally to you. I'm spending a lot of time at a desk these days, so these ankle circles feel so important to me. Try twisting them the other direction. And then allow the feet to come to a neutral position and just try wiggling your toes inside of your shoes. Close your eyes for a moment. Precious feet that take you where you need to go all day. Just kind of honoring the feet and ankles. Great. Okay. And the next thing we'll do is give ourselves a quick little jaw massage. So a lot of people holding a lot of tension in the jaw, grinding their teeth, etc., especially being at a desk. So I just kind of grab right around where the ear and the jaw meet, and I just kind of go intuitively, some circles forward and back, just to try to get the tension out of the face a little bit. And then lastly, we're going to do a little bit for those of us who are in front of the screen quite a bit, getting a little bit of digital eye strain sometimes. So this is actually an ancient practice in yoga. We're going to bring the hands together and rub them together quickly. We're going to be building up some heat in the hands. Take a deep breath in. hold your breath and go ahead and press the hands onto the eyes, but gently. Hold the breath for a moment. And now keep your hands there and gently exhale the breath out. Take a couple of breaths with your hands still on your eyes. And go ahead and release the hands down. We're going to do this 2 more times so you get the hang of it. So as you rub your hands together, they actually did a study where gentle pressure on the globe of the eyes was responsible for a drop in heart rate and blood pressure. I really love when modern science echoes what these yogis were doing for thousands of years. Go ahead and bring the hands onto the eyes. Hold for a moment. Allow your breath to exhale, but keep your hands there. Release your hands down, and then we'll do the last one. Bring the hands together, rub them together really quickly. Of course, heat allows that whole, brings blood to the area. Deep breath in. Hands onto the eyes. Hold the breath. Keep the hands there and exhale. Continue to breathe. Continue to breathe. Keep your eyes closed and release your hands down. Bring your awareness to the muscles in the back of the eyes. The space behind the eyes in the yoga tradition is called the Chid Akasha. This is a space for creativity, innovation, and inspiration. Just for a moment, softening the back of the eyes and allowing for some space. Smooth breathing. And when you're ready, you can allow your eyes to open. Thank you so much for joining me for this stretch break.
Thank you so much, Sarah. That was amazing. I think we can just go on and have you for like an hour. Thank you. Moving forward, since we have a few minutes left, I want to share some of our resources available to you to assist you to move more at USC or outside of USC. And these are different resources available through our partnerships with Yoga USC like Sarah, through our health plans, environmental health and safety, Office of Transportation, Rec Sports, and a variety of other partners like the Rec Center. So in the chat, Suzanne will be dropping, if she hasn't already, the link to our Move Well at USC website. And I'll just briefly highlight the different resources available to you, but you can click on the link and follow along and dig deeper for more information for any of these things that you might be interested in. We have Gym Pass, which is for eligible employees, benefits eligible employees, who can access a wide variety of workouts, trainers, gyms, studios, online classes, even wellness apps for a monthly membership. Yoga USC, which Sarah directs, provides all yoga related activities on the USC campus, in person, virtual, educational sessions, all for faculty, staff, and students. We also have intramural sports for faculty and staff to compete in various types of sports and tournaments, and also to connect with other faculty and staff on campus. Through the Vitality Health Review and the Vitality Health Check, you can receive a snapshot of your current health by completing a brief questionnaire. And they have a bunch of resources on their website to help you craft personal health goals and work towards them. There's also the Fitness Incentive Program, where you can get reimbursed up to $220 fitness-related items. The Rec Center also has Workout to You, where you can bring your favorite workout classes to your departments or locations. Through EHS and OT, there are ergonomic evaluations for free, where an expert can come to you or virtually to make sure that your workspace is set up properly so that you're preventing any kinds of repetitive injury and illnesses going forward. Through transportation, there is the subsidy program where you receive 50% off the cost of transit passes. There is carpooling and also inter-campus USC buses to get you from UPC, HSC, and other locations. You can also get active right on campus through the Lion Center, the fitness center at Soto, as well as the one at the Village. And then we've also mapped out walking paths throughout UPC and HSC. In terms of materials, we have a collection of tip sheets to inspire you to keep moving. We have tips for standing meetings for those that are able to stand, as well as movement meetings for those that want to conduct any kind of walking or movement meetings. So feel free to download, share with our colleagues. We also have an infographic to encourage you to take the stairs if you're able to, that you can post by the elevators if that's allowed. We have a stretch poster that we partnered with the rec center to develop. You can print this out, hang this by your desk or cubicle. And that slide that you saw earlier, feel free to download that, insert that in all your presentations, and remind your participants to stretch. And then finally, I am so excited to announce Walk USC. This is a walking program intended to provide a culture of movement and social connection on campus. We've oriented 67 walk leaders, and we are launching 31 walking groups throughout UPC, HSC, Alhambra, and remote. The walks will begin the week of June 5th. Promotions will go out sometime tomorrow and throughout the month of May. All you have to do is register, fill out a waiver, and you can go to as many walking groups as you like, and as your work, your schedule, and your supervisor allows. We'll also have some incentives. So the more walks you attend, the greater your chances of earning prizes. So with that, I'd like to just, before we turn it over to Q&A, just highlight our next session, which Tom mentioned earlier, and that is next week, Spirit Moves, with Laura Hilton, Varun Soni, Mark Miller, and Allison Pimentel. So we hope you can join us for that to learn about spiritual resources for faculty and staff, as well as the latest research on positive effects of meditation and mindfulness. Tom, do you want to do the slide?
Yes. So just in case that maybe thinking about mental health in terms of your own experiences or people who you are connected to brings up the idea that more support is something that you might need, or someone that may need some more support. For staff, that's why we're here at the USC WorkWell Center. So our information is located there on that slide. Feel free to reach out to us in terms of looking for individual short-term counseling and support, as well as resources that we can provide as well on mental health. And then for students, we do have just the information up there in terms of any of you who are interacting with students who may present with some possibility of need for mental health support. There are the resources there for you. And then in terms of any sort of urgent matters, life-threatening support, mental health services that you or students can access, we have all that information up there as well. And so a lot of things that are available to you.
Thank you so much, Tom. We have a minute left, so if you do have questions, feel free to put it in the chat. I saw a few questions about where to get more information, and the link was already shared. The MoveWell website will direct you to all the different resources that I mentioned earlier. Since we only have a minute, I'd like to move forward with our raffle, which is the very last thing for today. And while we do that, please take a few minutes to complete our evaluation form. We have a few short questions, and you can earn a chance to win a $50 gift card at the end of the series. Your feedback is really, really important to us. So take a screenshot of that QR code or just scan it. And Suzanne's also dropped the link in the chat. So while you're doing that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and have Carla pull up the raffle wheel. And we're raffling off 2 journals. So let's see who our lucky winners are for today. Ooh, Catalina Soria, congratulations. We'll be in touch with you to coordinate delivery of your notebook, your journal. And our next winner for today, thank you all for being part of our raffle and our webinar, is Amy Yu. Congratulations, Amy. Well, thank you all for being here today, and we hope to see you next week. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day and find some way to move. Get some fitness in, get some steps in.